Ladies and gentlemen, I'll call this meeting to order, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. This meeting is being live streamed. Members, in order for online attendees to hear, please make sure you are unmuted for your microphone when speaking. Please identify yourself when making or sending a motion so that the secretary can capture who is making the motion. For those attending in person, please complete the sign-in sheet located in the hallway before you leave. If you wish to make a public comment, please fill out a public comment card and return it to a staff member. For those participating via Zoom, please keep your microphone muted unless called upon to speak. When appropriate on the agenda, we will request comments for those online, and you can indicate your desire to speak via the chat box. Staff is monitoring Zoom and will recognize you when it's your time to speak. With that, Aaron, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Bennett,
Present.
Frank Beal, President Brawley, Mayor Curry, Mayor Grasso, Mayor Hofert, Nina Idamudia, Mayor Noak, President Reinbold, John Robertson, Mayor Rodering, Joanna Ruiz, Carolyn Schofield, Ann Sheehan, Matt Walsh, Leanne Redden, and Dr. Kuros Mahamadian. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the quorum, and also as required by law, those who are online, which is Mayor Hofert and John Robertson. I'll entertain a motion for the board to allow them to participate in the meeting. Moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, all in favor, signify by a vote of aye. Motion carries. You are welcome online.
Thank you.
Item under the director's report.
Great. Last Friday, I had the opportunity to testify before the Appropriations, Public Safety and Infrastructure Committee alongside Rep. Will Davis for a subject matter hearing on House Bill 3784, which is CMAP Strengthen Communities bill, a funding initiative. And so the HB 3784 appropriates $2 million to CMAP to fulfill its requirements under the Regional Planning Act. Our act is really to help build stronger communities across Northeastern Illinois by supporting our technical assistance program. We did have bipartisan sponsors of the bill, geographically diverse sponsors across the bill, and received support both from IML and the Illinois State Counties Association, along with a number of civic organizations as well. And so we are particularly excited to get to this point. We've filed these bills every year, and I feel like every year we're starting to get a little bit closer to getting funding for CMAP to continue to do the work that we cannot do under the current funding that we have. We had over 70 municipalities, COGS and COMS, also file witness slips for that. And so again, as we get into the home stretch here, we will continue to provide you with information and ask you to support us and call your legislators and make those connections for us so that this funding request can be included in the fiscal year 26 state budget as we head into the budget making process here in the next couple of weeks here. So thanks to those of you who've weighed in so far. Really appreciate your support. And again, we are happy to help you, or if you have additional questions and want to talk to our Gov Affairs staff or myself, we're happy to, again, provide you with support, contact information, anything we can do to make sure that we're making our legislators aware of this funding request here and the impact that it will have on the region. As I mentioned, this appropriation will allow us to expand our planning support for counties and municipalities through our technical assistance program. I'm excited to say that our call for projects this year has wrapped up. This project call is done in partnership with the Regional Transportation Authority. We received 83 applications, again, an indication of the great need from communities for our support in their local activities. And we plan to announce the final list of awarded projects early this summer. And so while I'm on the topic of our local planning projects, I just wanted to highlight a couple projects that have just completed: the Harvey Comprehensive Plan and the Grand Avenue Corridor Plan in Franklin Park. So excited to work with those communities to start thinking about implementation. A couple other things that we've had since we last met in February. We held our second meeting of the Regional ADA Coordinators Group with over 45 municipal staff and ADA staff participating in that process. We want to continue to be a resource to these coordinators, many of whom are new to their roles, and have that forum for them to be able to affect that work locally. We also participated in the Chicago Architecture Center's annual Engineering Fest. We had a number of staff travel to the American Planning Association's national conference, where we did receive APA's Innovation Implementation Award for our Job Quality Access tool, a tool that we previewed here before, but helps our communities understand the advantages of of their local labor markets and identify some priority actions and activities around specific industries that are relevant to local action. And so finally, on out in the region activities, I was able to join CTA at the Austin Green Line Station groundbreaking, which is the beginning of their all stations accessibility plan, where they're really focused on making sure that all of our stations are accessible across the region. Moving on, I wanted to just remind you or share with you also, you probably saw a press conference regarding a news report that outlines how the General Assembly can enact critical funding reforms to secure a stronger financial future for Illinois. A coalition of policy and civic leaders, including CMAP, released a report called Modernizing Illinois Sales Tax, a Pathway for Sustainable Future report. Again, we recognize that a lot of the policies that the state is interested in and local communities are interested in costs money. And so as we started to think about how do we tackle the transit fiscal cliff, a number of the sources that we were looking at, one of the policy ideas that CMAP has talked about for a long time, which is modernizing the sales tax here in Illinois, would provide large benefits to our transit agencies, as well as benefits to the state, to local government, and to county government by really broadening the base and moving away from a goods-focused sales tax and thinking about restructuring the system that we have today. If the state were to expand sales tax base to services, it would create a fairer system and generate nearly $2 billion annually in new state revenue. Again, would help doing just the current formula that we have, bring about $350 million to maybe $400 million to transit in our region if you didn't touch anything. So happy to provide you with copies of that report if you're interested in additional details, or come talk to your local councils or other organizations that might be interested in hearing more about that. And finally, our work around developing a new regional vision is ramping up. So as you'll recall, last November, we had a board workshop where we talked with you about sort of our strategic levers of policy and implementation and convening that we have here, and how we use those to really focus on a better future in Northeastern Illinois. So the outcome of this work will be the next long-term vision that will set the framework for all of our planning activities at the regional level here. As regional leaders and influencers, your voices are really important to this process. So we will continue to have engagement with you all. And after this meeting, later this week, I will send you all an email. I'd love to just find some time virtually or in person to connect with you, hear what's on your mind in terms of what that next long-range vision looks like, and give you a little bit more in-depth opportunity to talk with us about this process. So as part of that, we will have a State of the Region event on November 4th to celebrate CMAP's 20th anniversary and announce our Regional Vision Initiative. We will invite leaders from across the region, including government, civic, business sector as well. We want to use this opportunity to build excitement and momentum towards the engagement activities that will follow across the region, because again, this vision isn't CMAP's vision for the region, it is the region's vision. It is the people of the region and your leaders like yourself that will be utilizing this vision and using it to help, again, make sure that we have high quality of life locally. I think that that concludes my update here, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions on the director's report? The chair will recognize
Nina.
Ladies and gentlemen, next item on your agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the minutes and two contracts, 401, 402, authorizing 401 enter into a contract with the University of Illinois for water supply outreach and educational services for up to a term of 24 months in the amount of not to exceed $237,000. Next item is the authorization to enter into a contract with Altogether as a result of the RFP 336 for facilitation, engagement, and event planning for a term up to 12 months in an amount not to exceed $272,800. Without objection, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, all signify by vote of aye. Aye. Opposed, vote of no. Motion carries. Next item is the executive session. As we have done, I think, the last couple of years, there's only one item on the executive session. The board has a right to go into exec session to discuss it. However, the recommendation is to release the one item.
That's right. So we're required to review closed session minutes of this board every 6 months. We currently have 4 sets of meeting minutes that remain confidential. Of the 4 sets, council has recommended the release of the January 11th, 2017 closed session minutes. At this time, we don't have any recordings scheduled for destruction. So
Is there objection to that, or if
I'd
not?
like to move that we take action as recommended by staff and our executive director.
The chair recognizes a motion to, in a second, to approve the recommendation of council about releasing the one item. Any questions again on that? If not, all those in favor signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote of no, the motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, transportation, RTP update, Ryan?
great. And I think we're just going to have Julie
Oh,
kick us
Julie,
off
too?
here. We've got a couple items related to updating you on the regional transportation planning process and the congestion management strategy afterwards.
Screens off?
We will get to work on that.
I want to twist your neck turning around.
It's back. Is it back? Oh, they're working. Okay.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Julie Reschke. I'm a senior policy analyst here at CMAP. I use she, her pronouns. For this agenda item today, we'll primarily walk through some of the priorities that are emerging within the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP. But before we get into that, I'd like to provide a high-level update about general plan progress. Okay. So the RTP has been and will continue to be quite a busy year for us. The first half of this year is dedicated to building consensus around our regional vision for transportation and assessing the current state of play in some key goal areas. The emerging priorities that we'll review today are an initial step in understanding what's top of mind for regional transportation partners. And in June, I'll return to share some information about existing conditions, which will help us better understand the context around some of these priorities. After the summer, we'll take all this information and use it to inform strategic discussions about how we'll implement our goals for transportation. But in the meantime, multiple key work streams continue to advance. So for the regional capital projects, or RCPs, staff have begun collecting project information from our implementing partners and continue to work with their resource group to refine evaluation criteria. The financial plan continues to develop its baseline revenue forecast and engage in conversations with its resource group about what reasonably expected revenues should be included in the plan. The congestion management strategy team is currently working to identify and prioritize strategies, which will ultimately feed into the broader set of strategies included in the RTP. Noah Harris, who's the project manager for the congestion management strategy, will be presenting more information about this item in the next agenda item. And lastly, while the project team has continued to engage regional partners and stakeholders over the last year, public outreach and general engagement activities will really ramp up this summer. And as a brief reminder, the RTP has an engagement site that features some helpful information and now includes an informational video about the RTP and a questionnaire that's available in both English and Spanish. In the last month or so that it's been active, the questionnaire has already received 750 responses. And we're really excited that so many residents want to tell us about their transportation experiences and perspectives. And we look forward to working with partners like you to make sure that we hear from people across the region. The website's a great place to visit if you want to learn more about the RTP, browse frequently asked questions, or submit materials for the project team's consideration. Okay, now getting into the focus of the presentation today. Before we get started, I'd like to share some details about the Emerging Priorities Report. The document is a snapshot in time that highlights or outlines high-level goals and objectives based on early research and feedback from stakeholders like yourselves. The report builds off current and ongoing regional planning efforts like ONDA 2050, and it reflects input from stakeholders like transportation agencies, county partners, advocacy organizations, and CMAP board and committees. As such, much of the content in the report is likely already familiar to you as it represents long-standing transportation priorities and topics that we've been discussing together for quite some time. And while the report is a milestone deliverable for the RTP that helps us make progress defining some of our key goal areas, please note that the final plan is where we'll work together as a region to solidify these details. So today we'll be presenting a summary of what we've heard so far and to hear from you about anything that's on your mind, like feedback, considerations, or questions. The Emerging Priorities Report identifies 5 goal areas, which you can see reflected on the screen. These goals are to strengthen connections between people and places, prioritize safety and public health, mitigate pollution and invest in resilient infrastructure, support economic prosperity and inclusive growth, and strategically govern, fund, and preserve the system. And for the remainder of the presentation today, we'll walk through these goals one by one, leaving time at the end for feedback and discussion. So for our first goal here, it's really about improving how people experience the transportation system. Objectives here highlight the need for strategies to improve travel time reliability, access options and flexibility across all modes, and transportation facilities and infrastructure that are fully ADA compliant. And while there's a focus on travel within the region, this goal area can also support the need for better connections into and out of the region through intercity bus and rail. The region has already provided an abundance of plans and studies to support these objectives, including examples like the RTA's Transit is the Answer, CMAP's Mobility Recovery, and county transportation plans focused on the bike and pedestrian network. Additionally, the congestion management strategy, which you'll hear more about shortly, will also help to further inform this goal area. Safety continues to be a significant regional priority. Data and residents' lived experiences have emphasized the need to better manage speeds on our roadways. Additionally, local and countywide initiatives have supported a more comprehensive approach to planning our transportation corridors in order to prevent crashes. By providing safe and abundant opportunities to use active transportation, these priorities also support public health. However, we heard from stakeholders that some of our communities experience disproportionate burdens from transportation through factors like air pollution, noise levels, and safety risks. We heard interest in using the RTP to further explore these challenges and identify strategies to improve disparate outcomes in public health. The next one here, the region's natural resources are a critical asset that support essential ecosystems, foster public health, and makes Northeastern Illinois an attractive travel destination for many. ONDA 2050 sets transportation-specific strategies to protect these resources and reduce harmful pollution from the transportation sector, especially from emissions. Since the adoption of ONDA 2050, stakeholders across the region have committed to these goals and made investments to advance them. Current and ongoing climate plans continue to highlight the need to reduce pollution from transportation and to make our transportation assets more resilient to extreme conditions like storms, flooding, and intense heat and cold. Moving forward, stakeholders have indicated that they're looking to the RTP to provide alignment across these efforts and to continue advancing shared goals. A message we heard, especially from our county partners, is that transportation strategies should not be a one-size-fits-all. Our communities have unique economic and land use needs that are shaped by their local market conditions, nearby industries, and transportation infrastructure. There's interest in using the RTP to explore approaches that align transportation planning with local development priorities, ensuring that investments promote economic growth, job creation, and transportation needs. In particular, our freight network has a significant impact to our regional economy. Stakeholders feel positively about the progress the CREATE program has made and would like to continue making improvements to better enhance the efficiency of freight operations in the region. At the same time, however, we heard about challenges to balance freight activity with impacts to nearby communities. Government partners are interested in using the RTP to explore strategies to balance freight efficiency with community well-being. And lastly, our final goal here, our region is a legacy transportation system with many historic assets requiring significant investment to maintain and modernize. Both research and stakeholder feedback highlighted system preservation as one of the highest priorities for our region's transportation system, with significant needs to increase funding sources, facilitate collaboration, and improve data collection and sharing. Outside of maintaining our current infrastructure, government partners also want to advance new and innovative projects, and some of these ideas include emerging technologies, which may pose new or unique considerations for the region. To manage these needs and implement the region's vision for transportation, we need sustainable and sufficient funding. Through the RTP's financial plan, we can build off efforts like the Plan of Action for Regional Transit to explore options to improve or expand revenue sources. And just to wrap up here before we get into discussion, ultimately, the Emerging Priorities Report will help set the foundation for upcoming work in the RTP. By outlining high-level goals and objectives in this early phase, we can promote greater alignment with subsequent efforts like data analysis, policy development, and the identification of performance metrics. Later this fall, we'll use this information to discuss actions and strategies to help advance the region's vision for transportation. And now I'd like to turn it over to you all to hear if you have any feedback on some of the emerging priorities we discussed, or if there's other questions or considerations you'd like us to have in mind.
Questions? Sure, go ahead, Doc.
You know what? Could you put on your microphone? I apologize. Thank you.
My apologies. Should I repeat actually what I said? It was okay. So I was suggesting on the first goal, which was connecting people to spaces, to consider the changes that have happened in the past, COVID time, especially with teleworking and flexible work environment, is no longer. We are just dealing with connecting homes to workspaces. Now it's just connecting homes to many other places, and people are going actually to lots of other places. So I encourage the team, actually just your team, to look into that and update the regional plan based on the reality of actually our time now. The other thing actually just, I would also encourage you guys to consider emerging mobility, which is with us whether we want it or not. The ride sharing, it's clear one, but just something actually just really important, and our region, we are not paying enough attention to that, is e-scooters. Is very serious actually just mode that's been growing. My research team at the University of Illinois Chicago, we have done extensive work actually on that, and very interestingly, actually, when we interviewed people, actual users in Chicago, 38% of people reported that they have actually experienced, accidents. And that's, I remember actually last round of the survey of CMAP, I looked at it, there was not even a single record of actually e-scooter travel. So not a single actually just e-scooter trip, which is an important thing now, especially if you can actually just find a way to plan it to be a feeder to transit system as an access or egress. That's going to be actually just turn into something useful. So I encourage you guys to actually look into that as well. Sorry.
Other comments? Go ahead, Mayor.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciated how this report was laid out. It's very clear, it's very direct, and it's giving me now a great template to take back to my council to talk about how we can integrate and work with the region's priorities. We're doing a sort of hyper-local transit assessment, and this gives us both aspirations and sort of opportunities to talk about how we can best meet the needs of our community. So again, you guys do amazing reports, and I just really appreciate how clear they are and how great they are in terms of laying out a pathway for us to then bring back to our communities. So thanks.
Thanks. And again, the input from this board as to suggestions or possible alternative directions or add to the directions are very helpful for staff. We can't think of everything, right? So that's why this board's here, to bring it from the street, so to speak, to the agency as to what's really happening out there, or changing things that are happening. So we appreciate it. Yes, very much. Sure, go ahead, Nia.
I agree. I like the way that the report is laid out, and I want to emphasize what my colleague suggested about looking at emerging trends. And the American Planning Association has their trend report that covers a lot of the information that we want to see. I mean, that we're seeing as planners in the next 10 to 20 years. And so I think that that would be a really good resource. And the American Planning Association is right here in Chicago. So I'm sure that there's some relationship or I can make some connections there. And then also just thinking about how in our current state of political polarization to still prioritize those vulnerable users. And I understand the sensitivity around that, given that how CMAP operates and how we operate with a lot of federal oversight and funding, but just making sure that the operationalizing of equity doesn't get lost, even if there's lots of things to consider. I'll stop there, but I still want to see those components in the plan.
Go ahead, Mayor.
One item that I've talked about in terms of transit in the past in all of these studies, and I still don't know that we have a full grasp of the scope of it, is the sheer amount of non-governmental transit activity that is going on, especially once you get into the Collier counties and suburban areas, whether that be, buses that provided by universities that, well, and then some of them are governmental, but they're not being done through our typical transit systems, whether they're from park districts, any number of corporate, shuttle services. We really need a full grasp of the activity that is happening in our region and how that operates in order to really create a true system that we can look at going forward. One other thing that I've talked about is that I feel sometimes we look at the future only in the scope of what we consider the Northeast region today. And we already see, the emergence of expansion of transit and other systems going outside of what our current footprint is. While our guideline right now is to stay within that footprint, the reality is by 2050, that footprint is going to look much different. It already is much different than we would have looked at it 25 years ago. So it's just something that, while we have our mandate to stay within our region, we should still look at what the impacts of the growth of the adjacent areas might be as we look at what the region may be defined as in the future. That makes for the best possible planning.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Can I have one more suggestion? I would also encourage you guys to get in touch with people who are outside of CMAP, who are doing, studies related to transportation system in our region. I know for a fact, actually, just several people in my campus at University of Chicago, they have several projects actually just funded by different agencies working for transportation system and transportation system actually just issues here in Chicago. And those are actually just available resources. So I'm just hoping that you guys, someone gets them, integrate them in the plan. So I'll be happy myself to share all the work that we have done actually just on the issue that was raised on the actually just vulnerable actually population, just transit desert areas. We have done lots of work on that, on emerging mobility, on active mobility, on e-scooters, and teleworking. We have done lots of work, and I'll be happy to share all those reports. So you guys actually might be useful for your report.
Yeah, if I could comment quickly, I've just been absorbing all the feedback you all have had. Would love to receive anything you would like to pass along, including stakeholders that you think we should be connecting with as a part of this process. And I'll also say some of the items that were raised today, wanting to get a sense of kind of what's going on in those areas. When we return in the summer, we'll have some data for you all about what's the existing condition within some of these goal areas that we've talked about. So hopefully that'll empower us to have a better sense of kind of what's going on, what do we need to do as we think about setting goals later this year. So more to come, but thank you for all the rich feedback.
Mayor, back to you.
One other thing, and I think it's something we've learned more recently and continue to discuss, and the way it interrelates, and it's great to kind of piggyback off this notion of, what the evolving workplace is, whether you're working from home. And I think that's still rapidly evolving. And I think we're still not quite to what that answer is going to be as different corporations make different decisions, different entities make different decisions. But I don't think it's going to be what we were before. It's going to be some different version. But in that is not just the transportation. And sometimes we need to look beyond the infrastructure that we simply think about transit and in roadways and even waterways and rail. We also, I think within our plan it'd be very interesting to look at the interrelation of, broadband, high, internet capacity throughout the region and where we're lacking and what that means to the workplace and the way that's affecting transit. Are people gravitating to areas where, yes, they work from home, but they need to work from home where they have reliable, capacity. That also goes to grid capacity, as we see the evolution of power reliability. What is that having to do in the way it interrelates to our transit, to our roadways, and to all these different things? They're not independent of each other. They do relate. And the more we have an understanding of that and the way we plan for that in the future is vitally important.
Good comments. Joe, thanks. Next item is the congestion management strategy update. Noah?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Noah Harris, and today I'll be giving a presentation on the congestion management strategy. By the end of this overview presentation, we'll have covered why we're doing this project, including its connections to our federal requirements and to the regional transportation plan, and how we're setting the foundation for future planning work to support implementation after the completion of this effort. So first off, we all know that congestion is a significant problem. Every year we see headlines like these reporting that the region has some of the worst traffic congestion in the world. And we also know that no agency can solve these problems alone. And as the MPO for Northeastern Illinois, CMAP is responsible for overseeing a process to bring partner agencies and organizations together to navigate these challenges in collaboration, and to ultimately develop a cohesive regional strategy to manage congestion. And throughout the upcoming slides, I'll step through that process, the required components, and the progress we've made to date. So as I was alluding to, the federal regulations established the congestion management process as a required component for regional transportation planning for urbanized areas with populations over 200,000. And those regulations emphasize key connections to other transportation planning and programming activities, particularly the regional transportation plan. So for example, the CMP should align with and support the advancement of all of our regional transportation planning goals, like those Julie walked through, and not only those squarely focused on congestion. And additionally, the measures and the strategies that make up the CMP can feed directly into the regional transportation plan. And because of these critical connections, we're guided by questions that are not only focused on where congestion is occurring and how to manage it, but more broadly, is the system working for people? Are people able to move around the region and access destinations they need and want to go to? The Federal Highway Administration provides what I think is the most useful definition of the CMP, which is a systematic and regionally accepted approach for managing congestion that provides one, information on system performance, and two, that assesses strategies that meet state and local needs. So most of the required components of this process fit into one of those two buckets, either activities related to information on system performance or activities related to strategies. So yeah, I'll keep going here. Quick note, just to clarify some terminology as we get further in. You'll hear us talk about the congestion management strategy. That's the name of this current initiative to comprehensively update the region's congestion management process. So the congestion management process, on the other hand, is the technical name of the federally required ongoing planning activity. CMAP has continuously met ongoing CMP requirements through various staff level activities. However, the region's current CMP documentation dates back to 2013, which is one of the reasons, but not the only reason why we're pursuing this comprehensive update.
I think you can just keep going in the slides. We'll get them going when we can.
Great. So Yeah, if you jump to the next slide. FHWA provides guidance documentation that outlines what they call their 8-step process model for congestion management. Before we jumped into these 8 steps, we established a resource group made up of subject matter experts and key transportation partners and organizations from throughout the region to guide the development of this work. The first steps here are to establish the objectives and the network and performance measures. These are essential components to a data-driven, performance-based process to congestion management. And with these parts of the process established, next are to collect data and monitor system performance and analyze congestion problems and needs. The final 3 steps are focused in on the strategies. So identifying and assessing strategies, programming and implementing strategies, and evaluating strategy effectiveness. These 3 steps are those that we're particularly excited to focus in on for this comprehensive update. And I'll dig in a little bit more in the coming slides. So how will this work impact communities throughout the region? These are a few of the preliminary objectives we've identified with the resource group and through additional stakeholder outreach, the things we'll aim to achieve through this process. So enhancing access to jobs and destinations, improving reliability of all modes, including for freight, so making sure the products that move to and through the region can get where they need to go, enhancing transit and active transportation options, reducing the impacts of extreme weather, as well as incidents and construction and special events and others. And we've all experienced challenges related to these. And while we're still developing them, they paint a picture of the types of objectives that we're headed towards with this process. So with the objectives in mind, we'll use data and performance measures to identify the congestion problems, locate the problem areas. So in other words, where are the congestion problems most severe, and identify root causes. So what's causing the congestion? Is it crashes and weather? Is it signals? Is it lack of multimodal options, et cetera? And from there, we'll establish a methodology to identify the strategies themselves. So we have room to develop a methodology that is both comprehensive and flexible based on the unique needs of our region, and recognizing that we have limited funding and that we won't be able to build our way out of congestion. We hope to establish a methodology to identify strategies that are cost-effective, that are right-sized to their context, especially considering different facility types and different land use contexts, and that are consistent with all of our regional transportation planning goals. And on the next slides, I'll share 2 peer MPO examples to demonstrate options for the types of approaches we could take here. So the Southern California Association of Governments has what they call a mobility pyramid for congestion management strategy identification. These strategy types are prioritized from the base of the pyramid moving upwards. This approach encourages consideration first for those strategies that are most aligned with the region's transportation planning goals, and that might be more cost-effective to implement considering limited funding. So think preservation and maintenance in that light blue area, and demand management and operational improvements in the middle, before considering those strategies that might be more expensive or more complex, like system expansion, shown at the top in red. Similarly, the Metropolitan Council has what they call their congestion management toolbox. So working from top to bottom this time, the toolbox recommends strategies to reduce vehicle miles traveled, strategies to shift single occupancy vehicle trips to other modes, and strategies to improve operations before finally considering capacity expansion. The federal regulations for strategy identification lay out a similar tiered approach like this. And CMAP is working with the resource group to develop an approach similar to these that's uniquely tailored to the needs of our region. So this effort will result in 2 primary deliverables that will be available to the region to support implementation. One is a strategies guidebook, and 2 is a comprehensive corridor study template. So the guidebook will lay out the suite of options for congestion management strategies and provide guidance on that process to assess right-sized strategies, such as those peer examples that we just went through. CMAP will draw on this guidebook in future planning work And we'll encourage the partners and transportation implementers to draw on it as well to maximize benefits at a regional scale. The corridor study template will establish a framework for regional collaboration, emphasizing multi-jurisdictional and multi-agency coordination for the planning and implementation of those strategies, especially at the corridor level. So ultimately, these are resources that we as CMAP can use, and they're resources that will be available to the agencies and the municipalities across the region to use. For example, if a mayor has a corridor that has significant congestion challenges that they want to improve, they can look to the guidebook and to the template for strategies and guidance on bringing the key folks together to support successful implementation. Finally, looking at the timeline and the next steps. So we launched the resource group this past summer and have worked with them to develop the objectives and the network and the performance measures. Now we're shifting into establishing the process to analyze congestion and on developing the strategies guidebook and the comprehensive corridor study template. Once those processes are established and the resources are available, we will begin corridor evaluations, working towards a suite of evaluated and ranked corridors by the end of this year. These are the corridors that we would look to prioritize for additional planning and implementation of the strategies. And we'll return to the board later this year seeking feedback on those resources that we're developing and on next steps. But with that, happy to take any questions.
Questions? In developing eventually corridor strategies, I gather that's both surface and transportation along those corridors, right? Is there a 1-2 option? Is it a 1 option? How are they approaching that?
Yeah, well, in the land use considerations too, is that what you're thinking
Yes.
about? Yeah. So I think that's one of the places where we have sort of this strong history of work, is that as we have these tools available to us, not only are we able to shift to the way that we're programming federal dollars to help us prioritize looking at corridors comprehensively and the things that have the most congestion, but also we have this great planning team that I think we can bring to bear and help support communities as they look at longer corridors. So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we just finished the Grand Avenue corridor plan. I think not only were they looking at congestion and sort of the right of way in that corridor, but they were also sort of thinking about what sort of economic development opportunities are there along that corridor that make sense. How do you make sure that as people are leaving and going from home to school or home to work or wherever, are they biking? Are they walking? Right. And we can really bring in that full suite of land use planning activities as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess the point is that, in fact, as exists today, the build out of a corridor could be impossible. I mean, you're at max road surface. So the alternatives, as indicated, whether you bike, walk, or take public transportation, that certainly the alternative. I guess sometimes you get concerned as to, for as much as you study it, it's really what is the capacity of those corridors before you even jump in. Not necessarily make a simple analysis, but to identify the fact that, look at this road another lane can't be added. It's built out to a point of not even having future opportunities. And I understand that, which just adds to the congestion. Interesting, and in the corridor identification, what corridors and what is it more voluntarily upon local governments, or for example, even the city of Chicago, to look at many corridors that are just almost impossible to travel, without being congested, and will always be congested.
Yeah, and we had the same conversation and presentation at the Metropolitan Planning Policy, MPO Policy Committee last month. And I think one of the things that came up too from the county engineering perspective is that they really want to leverage the active traffic signal management tools and technology that are available that we currently see some misconnections on too. So it could be land use planning, it could be constraint, but it could also just be thinking about how do we make our technology systems work better for us? Again, nothing's going to solve everything, but it looks like Mayor Noak and looks like.
That's why I think I appreciate when you use the terminology of flexibility and context of, we are a very diverse region, and each each part of it has its unique challenges, I think, as the chairman has indicated, and opportunities as well. So I think that's key as we continue this approach, is to understand that, there is no one solution for the region when it comes to this. And I just anecdotally have to tell you, while LA's MPO's framework might be good, at having actually been there this last summer with my family, I don't know that that's working. So maybe we should look at it in our own context. Maybe they'll learn from us. Thank you.
That would have been my follow-up, because I've got family out there, and you talk about max direct capacity of what they can do or can't do. It's just the demographics or the geographics of that region are just incredible.
It would go a little south of San Diego.
Thank you so much for the actually just for the effort, and I look forward to see actually just the output of actually just the report and the group that you're working with. Just a couple of suggestions. When you talk about actually just corridor management, I'm hoping that you don't limit. This is actually just very serious pitfall that I have seen many studies actually just fall into that. That once they identify a corridor, they focus only on that corridor, forgetting the fact that any changes you make in a corridor that would be actually has an impact on the whole system. So you need to have actually just have a whole view of big picture of the whole system. I give you an example, actually just probably just a long time ago, there was a study done for this agency for CMAP for the actually just pricing or just corridor management and also the pricing,
Congestion pricing.
Congestion pricing, thank you, for the actually just on Eisenhower. And the study that consultants was done was looking actually separating Eisenhower and looking only this, well, I'm going to take in one lane and just looking for actually just pricing and just, turning in the tollway to see what happens. Regardless of actually just what happens to the alternative arterials that basically are parallel, people are going to be switching to them. So I'm hoping that actually your group is aware of the impacts of any policy or any actual solution you want to consider for any corridor on the whole rest of the network. That's one thing. The other thing is actually you have to separate the type of congestion that we have. Majority of congestion actually happens on major expressway systems, and we have also congestion on the arterial network, and you mentioned actually just correctly about the signal timing. That's a big issue, that we don't have the centralized controller for the signal control actually just in our system. And I'm hoping that the plan, rather than looking at the bandages and just temporary solution, comes up and say, well, let's solve this once for all, for all, trying actually just to centralize this to be able then to look into traffic progression through actually just the network, just through synchronizing actual intersection to improve that, rather than, oh, this is actually just, we have a problem in this intersection, let's go ahead and retime the signal control on this particular intersection, which is not going to be actually, might be actually solving that locally, but it's going to be having, again, impact on the rest of the network. There are very well-known bottlenecks in our networks I've been in this region for 23 years, and I can tell you actually pinpoint exactly, well, on Eisenhower, that Oak Park location, that's a bottleneck that's been there forever. On I-55, the section between Central and Cicero and Georgia's, Pulaski is a problem, it's a bottleneck. Let's just try to come actually just with a solution to really address those bottlenecks. That's, if you want to actually, those are the actually just, if you solve those, it's going to be, we have RAM metering system in this region. There are over 100 RAM junctions that are controlled by meters, but those RAM meters haven't been calibrated for years, forever. So those are not working. So we have the reversible lane that we just went through the reconstruction, but the controlling of that reversible when you turn it, to optimize the traffic direction, that's not being done. So I'm saying that there are lots of things can be done, and I'm hoping that actually just you look at those whole system as a whole. Sorry, it was.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate the presentation. I want to say y'all tired of hearing me say this, but I got my planning degree in California and I worked for the city of Los Angeles for 5 years. I worked on the transit neighborhood plans team. So my entire job while I worked for the city of Los Angeles was to think about transit and congestion. And I will say the striking difference is that Chicago has a public transit system that LA doesn't, right? And so they do have a lot of progressive policies. And I worked on the Olympics bid to bring the Olympics to LA in 2028. And I had to redo a lot of the land uses and, Crenshaw line and all that different stuff. So I do think that California has some very progressive policies that Chicago and Illinois can look at absolutely, because they take planning a lot more seriously, because general plans are required by law in California. So they take it very, very seriously. And I do think there are some good things that you can learn from SCAG, and the fact that we have congestion, even despite that the fact that we have built-in infrastructure for transit, I think shows that we need a little bit of help from our colleagues who are trying to, come up with new and inventive ways of getting to transit, getting to less congestion. And also Los Angeles is twice the size of Chicago. It's literally twice. You could drive for an hour in California and in LA and not get to the tip of LA. So just wanted to state that I do think it's good for us to look at other context and take what's needed and then apply it to how it works in Chicago. One of the things I want to make sure we think about, again, is those vulnerable populations. We know that, to my colleague's point about freeways, about kind of these intersections that create separation and also create congestion. Those I want to make sure that we're looking at in the context of history and understanding that those decisions were made on purpose. Right? There's a whole Reconnecting Communities Institute that's out the Department of Transportation. It's on hold, but that talks about how we need to reconcile how our neighborhoods were purposely dissected by transit and congestion, right, is a part of that. And so I think looking at the historic context of that will be important setup for your analysis. So I just want to make sure that that is captured. And then again, thinking about those vulnerable populations, because some of the unintended consequences, which I learned in Los Angeles, of having very progressive policies is that sometimes if those policies don't have those vulnerable communities thought of at the beginning of it, they can get displaced. And I got displaced because of a measure that I supported when I lived in Los Angeles around transit. And because I have that lived experience of being displaced by a policy that I believed in, I do understand how important it is to think about those unintended consequences on the front end. Not to say that we don't do the things, but we try to think about those unintended consequences like displacement, or if we were to, make certain measures or traffic calming measures or do certain things, what displacement could happen because of those policies, and then how do we add protections in for that? So I want to make sure that's part of the toolbox that we're offering in the final report. So I just wanted to offer those two things. Thank you.
And if I could just add too, I think we've got some great examples in our region where PACE has started to do this bus on shoulder and also just become more integrated in the tollway system as well. And so we didn't spend too much time talking about shifting people to other modes during this conversation, but I do think that I wanted to remind us that that is a critical part of our system here in the region, and that we think it's so important that those transit assets be considered. And it's a real sort of first thought process before we start thinking about like expansion across our region as well. So that'll be encompassed in this toolbox as well.
We will have conversations going forward regarding it.
We will.
Because obviously there is a bigger picture on any corridor, whether you do have capacity for road lane or you're trying to discourage that. Are we providing enough, transit options to go along with it? So, and then finally, as always, it's money, and what kind of cost analysis is being done truly to indicate whether or not you can extend rail versus building another lane. Those have always been out there as far as questions of a cost analysis. So yeah, that conversation go on for a long time.
Thank you, Noah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Good
you.
report.
Thanks for all the great input.
Moving on, under legislative update, Cassia.
Just a quick couple of federal and state legislative updates for you all. On the federal side, we are continuing to monitor recent executive orders and other federal directives for their impact on the region. Last month, we met with our county engineers to hear more about the local impacts of these federal actions. We really primarily focused our conversation on the recent USDOT guidance that requires some additional review of unobligated discretionary awards for their alignment with recent executive orders. Our understanding is that that amount of awards that is subject to this review is probably in about the hundreds of millions of dollars range. So something that we're continuing to monitor and stay in close touch with our federal partners and our congressional delegation as more information becomes available and these impacts kind of continue to unfold. Another point in the federal space, reauthorization. So I'm sure you all have heard that talks about surface transportation reauthorization are continuing to ramp up. Most recently, Secretary Duffy testified before the Senate EPW committee and offered some insight into what USDOT is seeking in a reauthorization bill. I think some of those themes that emerged include safety, permitting reform, and investing in innovation and technology. As we did in 2021, so CMAP staff are working to develop some principles for reauthorization that we will share with our federal partners, our congressional delegation. So we've begun these conversations internally so far, but again, hope to facilitate a broader regional conversation and have you all take part in that. Finally, just a quick note on member priority projects or earmarks. So the most recent continuing resolution did not include funding for FY25 earmarks. And this is generally about the time of year when congressional offices will seek application from communities on their respective funding requests. This year, we know Senator Duckworth's office is prioritizing funding FY25 requests and not seeking new applications for FY26. The House Appropriations Committee has also recently opened up their process for FY26. Each of the members in our delegation is sort of handling their processes a little bit differently, whether they are seeking new requests or prioritizing their FY25 requests. So again, something that we'll continue to monitor the federal appropriations process as that impacts our work and impacts our region. Switching over to the state side, I echo Erin's thank you for your engagement on House Bill 3784. It is a really important milestone in the legislative process to have that bill have a subject matter hearing. So very grateful to have reached that point. As Erin mentioned, the bill is not going to pass on its own necessarily, but the goal is to get this incorporated into the final FY26 budget. So your ongoing engagement with your legislators is appreciated as the budget deliberations get further underway in the coming weeks. Just a quick note on, to that point where we are in the legislative calendar. So the third reading deadline is this Friday. So kind of a frenzy time right now in the General Assembly. Next week, both chambers are recessed. The House returns the following week and the Senate the week after to hear the opposite chambers bills and then again continue budget talks. It's kind of full steam ahead until end of May. Obviously, one major item that's still open for a lot of deliberation right now in the General Assembly is transit reform and funding. So since I think we last convened, the House Transportation Committee had a subject matter hearing on two bills that have been filed, the MMA Act as well as the Labor Backed Bill. And the Senate Transportation Committee had a subject matter hearing focused a little bit more specifically on the operating fiscal cliff. This was both for our region, but also looking at this issue downstate as well. So we're, continuing to monitor the hearings and respond to legislative inquiries as they arise. We have had a few members reach out interested in hosting transit listening sessions in their district next week while both chambers are recessed. There's a little more in district time. So right now we have two events scheduled, one in Westmont with Rep. Deuter and Representatives Moeller and Ness are jointly hosting an event in Algonquin. Our role is really to provide kind of a part 101 and the representatives will facilitate dialogue with their constituents on this topic. And they're maybe more in the pipeline too. So we're happy to report back on how those went at our meeting in May. If there are any other CMAP related legislative issues that are of concern to you, either on the state or federal side, please do let us know. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Cass. For us, it's a busy session on there. We appreciate the work and the effort, especially funding for this agency is, as we go in our 20th year, is still critical, and the ask is very minimal, considering how that budget has grown in 20 years from where it was back then to where it is now. And actually, our ask is actually decreased from the beginning. So again, let us know and inform the board members about any additional witness statements and or contacts that we can make to the key players in funding us.
We will, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to other business. None before the board. Public comment. And I'm sure Garland's up.
Let's see. Yep. Garland?
Yes. How you doing, everybody? It's Garland Armstrong, formerly Just Plains in Elmwood Park, now living in Des Moines, Iowa. How you doing?
We're doing great, Garland. How about you?
All right. I just want to say, for people with the disabilities, maybe you should be able to have Access Living come over there and have them coordinate and see what they're doing and what y'all doing, so they can see it firsthand and how y'all can work together with Access Living, so Access Living can make sure that they are part of it too, because they have no idea of it, that they feel like they're out of touch. But maybe you should engage with them at Access Living and see how they can help out too, if they have any ideas or suggestions with y'all working together with it. So that's why maybe one day you should have the ADA facilitator go over there to Access Living and have some of them come over there one day and see what their suggestions are, other ideas, what y'all going to be facing with. So that is my point of view of it. And also too, I'm want to know one day if y'all going to be able to have Amtrak one day be able to come to the Transportation Committee meeting and tell them and I also want to say to them, especially where I'm at here in Iowa, there is not even, they only have the bus going from Des Moines to Chicago, but whenever, because we need something like an Amtrak, because there's only one problem, have to go all the way down to Osceola. That's an hour drive from Des Moines to Osceola Amtrak Depot to get on the California Zephyr coming there and to see if it's on time or not. But my suggestion is for y'all to get an Amtrak representative to come to the Transportation Committee meeting so I can tell them the side of our story, what is what. So one day they're going to have something like one day from Omaha to Chicago in the near future. So that will be something from all walks of life wants to know, and how will they be able to implement it. So that's all I have suggestions about that. If you have any questions or comments concerning about that, that would be a good idea.
Yeah, thank you, Garland. We have had a number of conversations with Access Living. While we haven't invited them to present before this board, we have been working pretty closely with them on our Community Alliance for Regional Equity program, and I believe have been in touch with them on a number of the regional transportation priorities as well. We're happy to connect you with Amtrak staff, and thank you for that comment.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Garland. Take care.
All right. You too.
Let's see, any other?
Executive Committee will meet right after this. No other business for the board. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved and second, all in favor in usual manner. Motion carried, meeting adjourned. Thank you.